Welcome back to I See a Pale Moon Rising, Nightmare Coast, host to host. My name is Kazuma Hashimoto. I am one of many wonderful hosts, part of this amazing Bloodborne podcast. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a Japanese translator and media critic.
And I am Casey Crick. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a writer, internet person, baseball team captain. That's not necessarily relevant here, but,
wow.
but yeah. And then, yeah.
Hi, I'm Chris Geldart. My pronouns are he, him. I make tabletop games, and I do this, and also exist on the internet, as does Mikey.
Hi, my name is Mikey Z. My pronouns are he, him, and I am also a tabletop role-playing game designer, as well as a writer and graphic designer.
Cool. And today we're going to be looking at, like we've mentioned a few times, the kind of the core central area of this game, or at least, the other areas come off from, which is Cathedral Ward. Which we entered into last time. I don't think previously we saw or Mikey got to see kind of the boss that leads into. We talked about the arena and the area of Erdon Chapel's graveyard, but I don't think we actually looked at that kind of boss itself. And I think it's important to for you to at least see that boss, who is Father Gascoigne. Papa Guac, people have many names for them. So I think we're going to start by kind of like watching the kind of the couple of cutscenes that basically are that fight. I may have footage to put in here of the fight, maybe, we'll see. And then kind of there's an introduction cutscene into Erdon Chapel itself.
Beasts all over the shop. You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
It's like the kind of the cutscene we had before the fight with Gascoigne. Yeah, first impressions, then we'll talk about it kind of briefly here.
Jeez. I just love how violent and like emblematic of someone doing work like the animations in Bloodborne are. I don't know how to explain that properly, but I love how much force they're able to get into some of the animations. It's just really good.
Yeah, it's super visceral, I think. I remember the first time I saw that cutscene. Well, so like I had seen this previously because people had uploaded beta footage, right? Like when the game was in, I think, closed beta, and there was more dialogue involved as well when you would encounter Gascoigne. But just his introduction, I feel, is a very interesting mirror as to what you're doing as a hunter, because he is a hunter himself, and just the brutality that you see someone else enacting in a way that isn't as prevalently shown as the way that you interact with the world through your interactions outside of, like the visceral noise, like counterattack sound. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's also, I think, with that animation, I think it's maybe not like intentionally funny, but I think it's a little bit funny how every time he kind of hits down, wobbles back up into frame.
And I think too, it's an interesting. I think there are a lot of different interesting things that Gascoigne like introduces to the world immediately, and I think like going into this game like completely like unaware of what the broader world is. Gascoigne is technically the first like hostile hunter that you encounter. The only other hunter that you encounter before this is maybe Eileen, but then like you run into this guy that is completely feral in multiple ways. We should actually maybe like pull up the boss fight itself just so that Mikey can see like parts of how that goes.
Yeah, so one of the kind of interesting things about like we'll come back to it later. I'm actually pulled this in here. Is part of Gascoigne's clothing is that, do you call it a shawl? The thing around the neck, the back. Is it
Yeah.
a shawl, like a
It's
scarf?
like a priest. I don't know what the word
Habit.
is exactly. Yeah, it's like a priest habit. It's identical to actually because I just found this garb. It's sort of reminiscent of the black church garb in a way, not entirely, because it is indicated that he comes from a foreign country, and this is compounded by cut dialogue that was part of the beta of the game that actually ties back into Demon Souls, and I'll talk about that a little more once we get further into the Cathedral Ward, actually.
Yeah, I also wanted to kind of call attention to it because the Hunter Chief emblem has like this similar kind of white fabric, and I'm not sure of how much that is tied to Gascoigne and if Gascoigne is like that headhunter, but fabric and embroidery is like a consistent thing in the church's aesthetic about rank and kind of how high up you are, how much you know, and your kind of position within the church.
Are you rich or are you not?
Yeah. I actually misspoke. It's actually like called a stole, the part that wraps around their neck. In real life, in the Catholic Church, like those will change depending on where you are in the liturgical year. Like there's green for ordinary time, purple for Lent, I think, and white for like post Easter, and then I think red is Christmas. So there's different colors, and usually like even really poor churches, like those are often sewn by constituents, by people that go to the church. In Catholicism, and like taken care of by usually the moms of altar servers. I know because my mom did it. So those are usually really like fancy and ornate, nicely embroidered, even if like it's a relatively poor church, because they're like one of the ways that people devote their faith is by making this stuff for the priests. You can buy them, but some people, like most churches, I think, have people that volunteer to make them.
I think that too is reflected in the world. We've kind of talked about like not always having Bloodborne like as a video game have to play by the rules of the real world, but there are NPCs in the game. So after you beat Gascoigne, you can buy his outfit for your character to wear, and there are NPCs in the game that recognize you when you're wearing Gascoigne's outfit as a member of the church. And so this is not something where we say, oh, he looks like a priest, or he's supposed to like evoke our real world priestly imagery. He is literally a member of the church, at least in garb and like how he looks, and people seeing him would recognize him as a member of the church in the world.
Yeah, and then what's kind of point out, I think what Casey's alluding here is like Gascoigne is a member of the church and a hunter. The two go hand in hand here in this world.
Mm-hmm. One thing that if you just watch the cinematic, it's so hard to communicate how actually terrifying it is to encounter Gascoigne for the first time, because I think a lot of, if you've played Dark Souls, the Capra demon, that you start this fight, you walk through, and there's a man running at you with a gun and like a big axe, and you're in a small space comparatively to like you don't like there's a lot of tricky like maneuvering, and this man is running at you, and he's really scary and he's really powerful. My first memory of Bloodborne was I go to a friend's house and we're gonna play like Magic the Gathering, and then my friend's roommate is just playing Bloodborne for hours and hours and hours trying to beat Father Gascoigne. And for me, the whole game, my whole first impression of Bloodborne was, oh, you just fight Father Gascoigne forever. And so when I actually picked up Bloodborne, I was like, he's the second boss? Are you kidding me? And he's just that hard. He's just that notorious. He's like such a like game breaker for so many people.
When I first played this game, and kind of a bunch of my friends kind of streamed it and like all showed it, and every single person, including myself, who like kind of played this and streamed it, got stuck on this fight or had a lot of trouble. And I think part of the thing here is like we kind of mentioned them before, but these gravestones everywhere, they really trip you up when you're first in here, because you're running away, trying to like run away from this terrifying man with his big axe and his gun, and you keep running to trees and gravestones, and then getting like pummeled and stuff. Then you get halfway, and then he has this has it like a Kazuma, how would you describe this?
It's a beast transformation for sure. He literally becomes monstrous. So we'll also talk about this when we hit the DLC and what a blood drunk hunter is. But he literally cannot control himself, and he transforms into a beast. There is some cognizance during this transformation, but only to a point in which he completely succumbs to this malady, right? Or this illness, as people say. Within the game,
Yeah.
to be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an item you can use called a music box, which you can get off of another character, a window character. You don't actually see. It's a little girl in kind of central Yharnam. There's a small music box, and if you use that, like there is a very clear reaction from Father Gascoigne. Clear that he is in pain. He is tormented by this.
Yeah, and like right before he transforms, he says, "What's that smell? The sweet blood. Oh, it sings to me. It's enough to make a man sick." It seems like he has some awareness of like what's happening to him, but he's to the point where like he can't put two and two together that that's what's happening.
See, you're closer to beasthood the taller you get. When you're edging around 8 foot, you're like 1 kill away from just turning into a werewolf, I guess. Also, I apologize, you can cut this, but I'm so sorry if you can hear Saijima destroying stuff in the background. He's just inconsolable today. Okay. He's turning into a beast. That's what he is.
Sicko mode.
Yeah.
Both go sicko mode.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll touch upon that in greater detail later, because there is a little bit of that expanded in the DLC content, and you'll be able to just see it later. I mean, you see it to a lesser extent among the people that have been going out and killing beasts, which we have, I guess, discovered or discussed that aren't actually beasts at all, but are people. And you see the slight transformation, specifically in the village square, I think. And Gascoigne is just a more progressed version of that, where he has been engaging in the hunt for so long and killing to such a degree that he's now a monster.
Love how his legs, I was gonna say hind legs, but they're just his normal human legs, supposedly, become almost digigrade, and how he steps, because he I don't know, the animation, I mean, obviously you'll see it on the video, but the animation is really kind of incredible, where his torso contorts in such a way that he almost looks like they are his hind legs, and it's really good. When he steps and lunges to attack you.
Yeah, and we talked about I mean, technically we're an architecture level design podcast, but we talked about the the graveyard and these tombstones, and I think one thing that always strikes me when I think about the Gascoigne fight is him lunging towards you and doing these big massive swings that are just emphasized by the fact that he's just disintegrating these tombstones just with so much force, and it adds so much impact, and it makes it so much more panicked of a situation. I think, yeah, absolutely, huge ups to the animation team and the level design and everything on every level of this fight. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's terrifying to suddenly be fighting someone who's already tough, and now they're jumping 30 feet in the air to land on you. What a day.
Bloodborne really became the hallmark for From Software boss fights, where there's always a transformation, and since then they've never gone back. And part of me is this is cool, but part of me is in Bloodborne it was purposeful, and in everything else it kind of pales in comparison, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, they're really tight. They're really focused and clear in this game.
I think the ape fight in Sekiro is iconic.
I love that.
So incredible, but I absolutely agree with you that there are too many multi-stage boss fights, I think, in their later games.
But then once we successfully, presumably, or at least we have, and hopefully you, if you're playing along with this, defeat Gascoigne, we go up into Cathedral Ward.
And Cathedral Ward opens up like spokes. It has so many areas that open into so many other areas, and the game is designed in such a way that it wants you to explore to the end of one of those paths and come back here and see how everything's changed, and then just repeat that process until you are forced to move on from this area. And it's really like the amount of care like just in the building of Odin Chapel, and like the fact that there are these candles like carefully placed on stairs, which stairs in video games are a nightmare. So like that alone is mind blowing to me. But like all of the design and all of the detail in every like inch of this place is so mind blowing and so cool to me.
Let's kind of walk through this area. So Kazuma has gone ahead and I think more or less cleared it out so we can kind of go through this area and take a proper look at it. We're coming to it now kind of in it. The area is like second phase. This area just have two phases. It doesn't change any of the architecture or any kind of the history of the space.
You just see a giant spider in the sky. and some enemies change. Like specific enemies. The more eyeballs you have, for example, you see I have 34 insight right now, that used to be a lot higher, it will actually change what you see on some enemies. For example, the white garbed enemies, they now have eyeballs attached to their lamps. But again, strike that from your memory, you don't see that now, you don't know about this.
Yeah, so you kind of come through this area, through that main gate, which I will show how you open it. You need an item called in the game it's called a Hunter Chief Emblem. Which is basically a really detailed, embroidered piece of silk with this kind of like a gold or silver thread, and it's like very intricate, very beautiful thing, which seems to be an object that the headhunter and probably a high-ranking.
Hey, I have it.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Let's take a look at this item then.
Do you want me to read it out?
Yes, please do.
So this is the Hunter Chief Emblem. A cloth emblem that belonged to the captain of the church hunters long ago. Opens the main gate that leads to the round plaza of the great cathedral. The main gate is shut tight on nights of the hunt, and could only be opened from the other side with this emblem. In other words, the captain's return and this emblem determined the end of the hunt.
We talked previously, I think in regards to Oldianum, about rituals and so on, and this is again another ritual of the city that has kind of post the beast outbreak. They are like using ritual and like kind of theatrics to craft a narrative about the curse and about like the church's response to the curse as itself something holy. The fact that the hunters are all kind of priests, that the hunter's chief has a special emblem and comes to a certain gate at the end of a hunt, it turns this nightmare plague outbreak into ceremony.
I just wanted to add that it's ceremony exclaiming like responsibility. This is sad, so we will mourn, and that's it. It's not we will address it.
Which is even more interesting that that's the context, because so it's white, which again, if I'm making the parallel to Catholicism, so white is used actually on liturgical days that celebrate like the life of Christ rather than like the body and blood so much. The white and gold is used for Christmas and Easter, where you kind of celebrate his birth and death respectively. So if you think of it like that, like the hunt being analogous to those like literal celebration days in our real life Catholic Church, it's like, I don't know what to say other than that's messed up, but that's messed up.
Yeah.
And I think like we talk about a lot of, I mean, I jokingly say what is blood, like when people ask what is Bloodborne about, I say it's a game about weird Catholicism, but like this is the whiteness is to tie in the blood, and it is, and part of the as we learn more about the church as you go on, like a lot of the people that administer the blood often wear white, like as a medicinal thing, and a lot of people that would get bloody wear darker colors, like black, for instance. Like we saw Gascoigne wearing black, and that part of that is about visibility and working through those things.
Black is not a vestment stole color in Roman Catholicism in real life, just as a note.
Thank you.
Yeah, should we go back down to kind of the central, kind of the circle area? Because there's I might have mentioned it previously, there's a very particular layout to the area. As a graveyard and as a kind of memorial, as a monument, which ties into, that this is the place where the chief hunter comes and kind of does this kind of ritual performance, walking into what is, I would read this kind of circular area here as being like a graveyard maybe for heroes. It kind of feels like there is ceremony itself to the graveyard.
Yeah, that's how I read it too. All of the graveyards that we've seen before we get up into where you need the Chief Hunter's emblem to go to are dirty. They're haphazard. They are dug up and they are thrown about. And these, where you need a symbol of authority to get into, are still inlaid in stone. They are individual. They are organized and decorated, and they have all of this care. And so I think, yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think this is where important people that died during a hunt are memorialized. And you have to get through so many layers of the city to get here. And there are statues over graves here that like we see in our everyday like graveyards, but like this city has seen so much death and has let so many people out to die that it clearly doesn't care about but pretends to care about. And then the fact that there is a ritual saying, oh, we sacrificed, we made it through this, but it's over, it is like it would be insulting if it happened like in real life,
Well, I feel like you could see these things happening in real life, like in relation to Catholicism or Christianity or Western religion or even Shinto, in response to things happening that people don't understand. Because there's some like lore stuff we're gonna get to later as we get through this in relation to like why they do this, because of basically what Yarnum did and what they took from people that weren't like of their own culture or their own country. And now they're effectively being punished for their colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in relation to, a lot of superstitions and practices in Western religion specifically, it comes about as a fear of the unknown, right? And it sort of plays off of that and builds off of that. And that's why you have these like traditions or rituals to, I don't know, cast out the devil or pay your way into heaven effectively. And it's all born out of fear. Because something's happening you don't understand. The people here don't understand, except for maybe a handful of people, as to why this hunt continues and why this ritual has to happen. And I feel like as an uneducated mass regarding the people, they participate in these systems out of fear.
And I think too, like there is a like complacency here. Something that we've talked about before is if any government said, hey, we have a medicine that can literally cure any illness, that's incredibly powerful, and you can just use that like a hammer and swing it however you want. And any cost to that medicine, you can boil it down to a ritual to where you say it's sad that we have to pay this price. That would just become normal. That would just become happenstance, and they wouldn't think into a lot of why it is sad or what that cost is, or if it was worth it to, especially the people that had to pay the cost. And I mean, I think a lot about like Thanksgiving as a U.S. holiday, or a lot about, I guess, more current event-wise, like how there were a lot of celebrations where, hey, we're going to clap because we love nurses that are working through COVID.
Yep.
And like it's just a recognition that, hey, this sucks, this is sad.
Yeah, like to kind of pull that directly, like obviously alluding there to kind of the clapping for the NHS here in the UK, here in Britain. Recently the new budget came through, and the NHS, those staff are only getting a 1% pay rise, which in real terms is a pay cut, because the politics and the ideology of those in power doesn't actually want to, empower or support those who are really doing all that hard work and are really kind of putting themselves on the line to help everyone.
I did want to note really quick, because I went back and like did some poking around at like vestments. So the thing that Father Gascoigne was wearing, it definitely evokes the stole, like, a lot. But the one thing that's really interesting in the way it's worn is it's worn most like a pallium, which is actually, like, in ancient times, it was like a scarf. It was more like a scarf, but now it's just like a little kind of band that sits. And it is always white. It is woven from wool raised by Trappist monks. And pretty much only the Pope and specific archbishops can wear it. So it is a symbol of authority, even though it's very, very simple. And it's only worn, usually only worn at certain masses that the Pope does. So I wanted to bring that up just so it's like, it's a weird mixture of the two. But the pallium, because it's only worn by certain bishops and the Pope, it's like a symbol of authority, like de facto. So interesting fusion there.
So I wanted to bring something up in relation to the garb because I picked this up earlier. So this garb is reminiscent of Gascoigne's garb. It's not his personal garb, so it won't reveal his personal story, but it's the black church garb. And it's attire of the Healing Church Hunters. The holy shawl, symbol of the Healing Church, flutters proudly on their backs. Most Healing Church Hunters are elementary doctors who understand the importance of early prevention of the scourge, achieved by disposing of victims and even potential victims before signs of sickness manifest themselves. Their black attire is synonymous with fear and that particular Yarnum madness. So when we were talking about colors earlier, about like white and black, specifically in the world of Bloodborne, the black attire has become a symbol of fear, and I think that's in relation to people of the Healing Church maybe even showing up before people even show signs of sickness out of paranoia and just taking people away and disposing of them like Gascoigne.
Again, I want to emphasize off the back of that there are NPCs in the game that if you are wearing this attire that the game literally says is synonymous with fear and that peculiar yarn of madness, they will say, "Oh, thank goodness you're with the church, you can help me." And that is so, like, mind-blowing, like, if you just see it as that, if you just see it as someone saying, "Oh, thank God you're with the church's secret police that murders people that might be sick." Just thinking, like, and tying in with, like, a lot of the, like, neoliberalism or conservatism that we've talked about, that, like, that tying in with how easy it is to forget the crimes of society, or how easy it is to forget the price of society. It just makes it a lot more simple and feeds into that, like, subtlety of the game that I really appreciate.
I think it's also important though to mention that the NPCs that do recognize you in this garb are people of the church specifically. Mm-hmm. Every NPC you run into and you're wearing this garb or the white garb, they're all people that are affiliated with the Healing Church in some way. There are some NPCs that respond to you positively, but it's only people that are of this affiliation that probably understand what they're doing and are aligned with this organization, that are, like you said, Casey, are the secret police of the church.
Yeah, so here where Kazuma picked up this set of clothing, I don't know if it'll be the case now because the day may progress too far, but potentially this will work. The door here in this street, if you're wearing church garb, or maybe if you're not, I think if you knock on the door, they address that you are from the church, and they kind of insist that there's no problem here, everything's fine, and that they value what the church does, and that there is a tinge of, like, fear in their voice.
Yeah, and if we liken that to, the real life church taking in, the Western church before the Great Schism, when it was just Christianity, taking indulgences during the Dark Ages, that was literally taking money from people that were oftentimes very poor, like taking advantage of poor and illiterate, everyday people in order to ensure that they were saved, or that was the stated purpose. It's just kind of like, okay, I'll let you do this thing that literally takes away my lifeblood because I've been raised that that's the thing that you do, and that's the thing that will keep all these scary things from happening. And it's just like, I don't think we're living in a new dark age or anything like that, but when you have people in power that give you assurances of what will happen if you just give up a little bit or just keep waiting or just be patient or just, listen and follow instructions, and, they'll do something that will help you. I think it's playing off that fear and paranoia, as you all said.
Here is exactly to quote what the NPCs in this alley say to you. And so a man says to you, praise the whole damn church, and best of luck hunting, best luck of all. And then there's a woman who also says, with the deepest gratitude for the church and all they do for us, the deepest, wildest gratitude, yes, yes. Which to me reads as like fear, like nervous laughing, stating these things of feel so grateful for what you do, and yet there's this like nervous laughter as they say these things.
It's autocratic power.
So I like that response from these NPCs in this area, specifically considering there are loads of sarcophaguses wrapped up in chains here, right? And these could literally be these people's neighbors that were taken by the church and then forcefully contained inside the sarcophagus because they are suspected to carry the plague. So naturally, I think a response of fear from these people and the idea that they could be dragged from their homes on suspicion of, having this curse or this sickness is very palpable and sort of reinforced by the environments and the NPC dialogue and the attire you find here.
Yeah.
God, yeah, I had not even considered that they may be putting people inside these things while they were still alive. I had not even considered that.
Well, yeah, because remember, Kazuma wasn't here, but we talked about this some last time where, we saw in the canals, like, what these quote-unquote corpses actually look like, and they're still crawling around, and they're visibly transformed. And I think it's, the amount of, especially not knowing what's going on because they aren't being told the whole story, the amount of I do not see it, I feel like these people are probably engaging in is very high. It's just like, this is not my beautiful neighbor. This is not my beautiful, next door house. It's just like, just take care of it.
Yeah. Yharnam in this game have like two responses to the world, and is I simply do not see it, and is I see everything. And those are the two responses people in this world have.
Yeah.
I think one thing I really, really wanted to get in on the area that Kazuma was just in is that that area where you're meeting these NPCs that Chris was reading the line from, there is also a sex worker that lives in there. This is very reasonably like a poorer or less served area of the community that has been more very visibly affected by the hunt.
Yeah, I think we can definitely talk about that NPC who's very important and has really interesting ties and connections to, and like kind of tells us more about the world in general beyond just Yharnam, which I think we can get to in future. So did you have a last point, Mikey?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so in reality, it's not even that these people are necessarily like ignorant, like forcibly ignorant. Like knowing this is a poorer district helps me kind of recontextualize it. It's that they're just tired. Like they quite literally don't have the emotional energy to deal with things because it's like they're already dealing with probably so many other things as happens when, either you're poor or just like living paycheck to paycheck.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of I See a Pale Moon Rising, Nightmare Host, Coast to Coast. My name is Kazuma Hashimoto, and I am a Japanese translator and a media critic.
Where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at JusticeKazi_, or you can find me on Twitch at JusticeKazi, where I talk about real-world media connections to conservative politics backed by the LDP.
My name is Casey Crook. You can find me on Twitter at Casey Crook, or if for some reason you like Blaseball and want to see shitposts on Twitter, you can find me at spickelstein.
And I'm Chris Geldart. You can find me on Twitter at Chris_Geldart.
And I am, once again, Mikey Z, and you can find me on Twitter at quantum. You can find the writing I've been doing. I think by this time the WandaVision recaps will all be done, but I will keep writing at comicsxf or comicsxf.com. And you can also find my graphic design and other creative works at quantum.labs, which is new.
Cool.
Do we want to do an outro instead of laughing, mimicking what the noise that enemy was just making.
Oh yeah, if everyone
Oh,
wants
you
to
mean
get
the crow?
Yeah, don't we get that crow dog in here?
Oh my god.
Oh,
I'm
this is
get that
gonna be
crow dog
audio
in here.
hell. Headphone warning. Headphone warning.
Okay, I'm gonna do it in 3.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, never-
Let's do 3, 2, 1,
Okay,
and then we'll do
okay,
it.
okay.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
I'm sorry, I can't help laughing.
Sorry, I
Fucking
It's
laughed
weird-
so
it's
hard
weird how-
I used my visceral attack backwards.
I don't even know what I was doing there.
It's weird how everyone that's played the game made dog noises and Mikey made crow noises. It's weird how that happens.
Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
made the noises that I heard the thing just make.
Oh no! Oh, you're making the brain sucker noises. That's so great.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
brain sucker, yeah.
That's perfect. That's great. Okay.